It took me 2 years of marriage to understand my place. I was the sixth wheel on a five-person friendship bracelet. I wish that were a clever metaphor, something I'd concocted in therapy to give my misery a poetic shape. It wasn't. It was a literal, glitter and thread reality that my wife Thea and her friends wore on their wrists during their annual beach trip, the one I was never invited to. Thea called them her family. Not the legal kind I'd apparently auditioned for and somehow won, but the worshipped, all-consuming kind. Her vow takers, her circle. There was Sloan, the brand strategist who spoke in slogans and treated every conversation like a focus group. Griffin, the human golden retriever, a man so allergic to silence he'd narrate the act of buttering toast. Blair, the siren, whose laugh wasn't just a sound but a physical force. If joy were a blade, she could fillet a bluefin tuna with a single giggle. And Reese, the eternal optimist and chaos goblin, a bartender emeritus who believed any problem could be solved with a sufficiently complicated cocktail. They existed in a group chat that hummed like a beehive at high noon, a constant thrumming presence in our apartment. It had rules, etched in the digital stone of their shared history. Rule 1. No heavy vibes on game night. Rule 2. Sundays are sacred. Rule 3. The one that should have been a red flag the size of a parade float. Partners welcome, but the circle comes first. The words look suspiciously like vows. I should know. I had stood under a floral arch and recited my own. Our apartment looked like two people lived there. 2 coffee mugs in the cupboard, 2 toothbrushes by the sink, 2 towels hanging in the bathroom. But our calendar looked like the itinerary for a party bus with a restraining order against intimacy. A color-coded map of my irrelevance told the story. Blue for my commitments, pink for hers, and a loud aggressive yellow for the circle. By June, our kitchen wall was a sunflower field, and I was drowning in it. Babe, you wouldn't believe it. Blair locked down that new rooftop bar for Saturday, Thea announced one Tuesday. She was perched on the kitchen island, fresh from the gym, wearing a tank top that read, "Vibes are a choice." End quote. Saturday, I echoed, my voice flat as I flipped a shrimp in the pan. The sizzle felt more enthusiastic than I did. Yes, Saturday, the day after Friday and immediately before Sunday, she smirked, catching my tone. Keep that sarcasm lukewarm, mister. This is the pregame for her actual birthday party next week. It's important. Important like taxes, or important like we promised my brother we'd go see his wedding venue this weekend? Thea's smile dipped for a fraction of a second, then rebounded with the practiced elasticity of a politician. Elias, don't be like that. We'll swing by the venue Sunday morning before brunch. Saturday is for making memories. Besides, your brother has been engaged since the Bronze Age. I told myself her tone meant nothing. I told myself the calendar was just enthusiastic. But you don't notice a leak because your house is suddenly underwater. You notice it because your socks are always a little damp. And my socks, metaphorically speaking, were perpetually soaked. My first strategy was revolutionary. I know. I tried talking. Could we just have one evening a week? I asked one night, the words feeling fragile in the air between us. Just us. No phones, no circle, no Reese Liv, blogging his quest for the perfect lime to tequila ratio. We were in bed. She was scrolling through her phone, the screen casting an ethereal blue light over her face, making her look like a beautiful specimen in an aquarium. For a moment, she looked away from the glow and met my eyes. She set the phone on her chest, a significant concession. That's fair, she said, nodding slowly. Totally fair. Tuesdays? Tuesdays? I repeated, a ridiculous balloon of hope inflating in my chest. Tuesdays sound perfect. The first Tuesday, she was an hour late. Sloane's brainstorming session for a new brand of artisanal dog water had run over. Thea arrived smelling of coffee and corporate synergy, full of apologies and a detailed account of Sloane's marketing genius. Our quiet dinner became a debriefing session I hadn't been invited to. The second Tuesday, Reese had a crisis of faith in a blender margarita recipe and required immediate emotional support delivered in person at his bar. Thea was a loyal friend, after all. The third Tuesday, she didn't even make it through the door. I received a text from the hallway. It was a picture of Blair's mascara-streaked cheeks. Emergency girl support needed. Be back by 10. XOZO. She came home at 1 a.m., smelling of smoke and lime. Sorry, she whispered, collapsing across me in bed. Her hair smelled like the bar she'd just left. You know I'd clone myself if I could. I don't want to clone, I said into the darkness. the words muffled by her hair. I want a wife. She laughed, a sleepy, genuine laugh, as if I had just made the cleverest joke in the world, and then she fell asleep. So began Plan B. If you can't beat the circus, join it. I attempted to infiltrate the circle. I bought a t-shirt that said, I paused my game for this. I learned the rules to a complex deck-building game that required the strategic mind of a chess grandmaster and the ruthlessness of a tax auditor. I showed up to game night with a cheesecake I hadn't baked, but had plated with the focused artistry of a Food Network contestant. Elias, Griffin boomed, genuinely happy to see the cheesecake, if not me. We need your cooperative spirit and your dessert skills. Do we? Blair asked, assessing me with the skeptical air of someone testing an unproven moisturizer. Because last time your energy was very accountant. I am literally an accountant, I said. She gasped dramatically. Oh my God, that explains so much. We played something where mushrooms were currency and alliances were weaponized. Sloan Liv commentated everyone's strategy like she was narrating a cult documentary. Reese made a round of cocktails named after inside jokes I didn't get. Every time I looked at Thea, hoping to share a glance, a silent moment of solidarity, she was already looking at one of them. Her face lit up with a joy that was reserved for them. You can be in a room and not be in the room. That night, I was a tasteful, silent lamp from West Elm. The small abandonments began to pile up, forming a mountain of evidence I couldn't ignore. When my mother had surgery, I sat for 6 hours in a waiting room with ugly floral paintings and a television blaring a game show. Thea didn't come. She sent 3 selfies from Game Night 2 smiling, one with a silly fish face and a, "How's it going?" text close to midnight. On the day of my master's graduation, an achievement I had spent 3 years of late nights working towards, Thea skipped the ceremony. It was Griffin's housewarming party. She posted a boomerang of a champagne bottle popping, the caption glowing with pride. Only it wasn't my celebration. To me, she sent a text, "So proud of you," with a confetti gif. It felt as empty as diet soda bubbly on the surface, with no real substance underneath. The worst was my brother's wedding. She was too exhausted to come. The circle had just returned from a 3-day music festival where they dressed as retro lifeguards, handing out mini water bottles with their Instagram handles taped on. When I tried to explain to my grandmother why my wife wasn't there, the woman who had survived a war, a recession, and raising 6 sons stared at me like I had just tried to explain quantum physics using only emojis. I cataloged these moments, not as ammunition for a future fight, but as proof to myself that I wasn't going crazy. My socks weren't just damp anymore. The floodwaters were rising. By the time our second wedding anniversary loomed on the horizon, I had stopped wrestling with the calendar. Hope, I had learned, was a sucker's game. But a small, stubborn part of me refused to surrender completely. I decided to make a plan that didn't require permission, a plan that bypassed the yellow-drenched grid on the kitchen wall. I booked a table at the restaurant where, on our 3rd date, Thea had told me I made her feel seen. The word had felt like a promise then. I bought tickets to see a band she'd fallen in love with so hard, she'd made a dozen playlists. A band whose music had been the soundtrack to our first year together. The tickets were hidden in my sock drawer, the one place in our home that was reliably, solely mine. The morning I was going to tell her, I found her on the couch, wrapped in a plush robe, legs tucked under her, scrolling through Instagram stories. Sloan was doing yoga with a dog. Reese was pretending a ring light was a personality. The room smelled of coffee and lemon cleaner, a scent of domesticity that felt like a lie. "Hey," I said, sitting beside her. The couch dipped with my weight. "I made plans for us for Saturday, for our anniversary." She looked up. For half a second, her face went neutral, that blank loading screen look that tells you the brain is searching for the correct social script. Then it arrived. She sighed, a slow, theatrical exhalation. "Oh, babe." The 2 words landed in the air like a death sentence. "What?" I asked, though I already knew. "Blair's birthday pregame is Saturday," she said, as if reporting an unchangeable law of physics, like gravity or the tide. "You know I can't miss that." I kept my voice level, the calm, reasonable tone I use with difficult clients. "Could you ask them to do Friday or Sunday brunch? I can call the restaurant, change our reservation." "Number." She was already shaking her head, her hair swiping her shoulders like a metronome ticking off the last seconds of my patience. "It's literally the only night everyone can make it. Griffin has that conference on Sunday. Sloan's stressed with her promotion. Reese just got dumped by whoever. They need me. We all need this. But it's our anniversary, I said, and I hated how small and pleading my voice sounded in the quiet room. That only happens once a year. You can see me literally any other time, she said, and then she did it. She crossed her arms, lifted her chin, and adopted the posture of someone standing on the moral high ground. Love can wait, but friendship can't. They were here before you, and they'll be here after. After. The word hit me like a bucket of ice water down my back, a full-body flinch. Not if we ever broke up, just after. As if our marriage was a limited-run television show, and the circle was the permanent, unmissable programming that would resume once my season was over. I stood up, because sitting suddenly felt too compliant, too passive. After, I repeated, my voice now belonging to a calmer, colder stranger. She blinked, surprised I'd plucked that specific word out of her sentence. You know what I mean. I do, I said. I finally do. Please don't make this a thing, Alias. We can do our anniversary dinner next week, or the week after. We live together. Why are you acting like I'm abandoning you on a raft? I could have said 1,000 things. I could have brought up the hospital waiting room, the graduation gift, my brother's wedding. I could have spoken of Tuesdays that were promises and then punchlines. But she already knew all those things. I'd said them. I'd underlined them in patient paragraphs. She was simply literate in a different language, one where my words didn't translate. So, I asked a simpler question. What am I in the circle's narrative? The husband? The designated driver? The tasteful lamp? You're being dramatic, she warned, her voice sharp. I'm being specific, I corrected. There's a difference. She stood then, tightening the belt of her robe, as if preparing to deliver a TED Talk on unreasonable husbands. You knew who I was when we got married. I thought I did, I said, the calm stranger handing my voice back to me, now trembling slightly. I thought you wanted to build something with me. I do want to build something with you, but not by tearing everything else down. Her voice rose. I can't abandon my friends every time you want attention. I wanted one night, I said. One. You're making me feel controlled, she said. And there it was. The nuclear word, glowing in the air between us like a halo with teeth. The argument was turning into that slow, familiar carousel. Me pointing at the empty seat beside me, her pointing at a crowd and calling it love. But this time, I refused to get on for another ride. The click I'd felt in my chest wasn't just a latch coming undone. It was the sound of a lock breaking for good. Instead of climbing back on the carousel, I went to the bedroom. In the top drawer of my nightstand, under a pile of forgotten receipts and a single orphan cufflink, was a sheet of paper I'd been drafting for a week. It wasn't a breakup letter. Not yet. It was a clarity letter. It said, I want to be chosen sometimes. I want a marriage with a door that closes and two people inside. I didn't give it to her. Saturday hadn't arrived yet. I still had tickets in my sock drawer. Hope is the last coat you hang up, even when the forecast calls for a hurricane. But the storm came early. On Friday afternoon, she called out from the living room, her eyes glued to her phone. Babe, don't be mad, okay? But Blair said we should do a pre-game on Friday night to save time on Saturday. Isn't that hilarious? And right there, between the wilted houseplant on the windowsill and the promise of a pre-game, I felt it. Love can wait, she'd said. Unfortunately for us, it already had. For too long. That night, I started packing. I found a one-bedroom apartment 20 minutes away online. It had cheap carpet and beige walls that screamed transitional phase. I signed the lease digitally. Freedom, it turned out, could be disguised as a bland, unremarkable PDF. I moved my life out in quiet increments, taking advantage of the very thing that had broken us. Thea was always out. Monday, while she was at Taco Tuesday, which had been moved to Monday to accommodate someone's schedule, I moved my books and my gaming setup. Wednesday, during the Circle's emergency wine night for Blair's work drama, I took my clothes and the contents of the bathroom cabinet. I moved like a ghost in my own home. By Thursday night, my life was 80% relocated. She came home at midnight, tipsy and laughing about something Reese had said. The first thing she noticed wasn't my absence, but the absence of my things. The missing PlayStation was the canary in the coal mine. Elias, she called out, her voice climbing an octave as she moved from the empty space in the living room toward the bedroom. What the hell is happening? Where's all your stuff? I was in the bedroom, zipping the last duffel bag. She stood in the doorway, her eyes wide, scanning the bare walls where my pictures used to hang, the empty half of the closet. The reality crashed down on her. You're moving out? The question was a whisper. Yes, I said quietly. I handed her the final copy of my letter, updated to remove any trace of hope. I want a partner, Thea, not a roommate who moonlights as a social media correspondent for her friends. Her eyes glossed over, but not with remorse. It was the disbelief of a queen whose perfect, stable kingdom had just been disrupted by a peasant daring to have his own thoughts. You're leaving me because I have friends? I'm leaving, I said, the words finally clear and solid, because I don't have a wife. 3 days later, I was in my new apartment, sitting on a mattress on the floor, eating Chinese takeout from a carton when my phone exploded. It was a coordinated attack. From Thea. We need to talk this through like adults. From Blair. You're breaking up the family. She's devastated. From Reese. Bro, you're so immature for ghosting instead of working it out. From Griffin. Maybe we could all meet up and discuss this reasonably. From Sloan. Thea deserves better than someone who abandons her. Abandons her. Apparently, leaving a marriage where I was treated like an afterthought was equivalent to leaving a golden retriever on the side of a highway. By Monday evening, it escalated. I came home from work to find them, Thea, in the full circle, standing outside my building like some off-brand intervention team. Elias, Thea shouted, stepping forward as the unofficial spokesperson. You can't just disappear and ignore everyone. We need to settle this. I raised an eyebrow. Everyone? Funny. I thought I was married to one person, not 5. Griffin tried his mediator tone. We're all a part of Thea's life, man. Leaving her means leaving us. Exactly, Reese added, nodding vigorously. You hurt all of us. I laughed. A real, loud laugh, right there on the sidewalk. You're telling me divorcing my wife is the same as divorcing her brunch club? Blair actually pulled out her phone, as if to record the moment for a future reality show segment. I gave them 30 seconds to leave. They didn't, so I called building security. As a uniformed guard politely asked them to disperse, Thea shouted over her shoulder. This isn't over. Standing there in the lobby, holding a bag of lukewarm noodles, I thought, no, Thea. For me, it already is. Freedom smelled like cheap paint and cardboard boxes. My new apartment wasn't much white walls that begged for personality and a kitchen that came pre-installed with the faint, ghostly scent of burnt popcorn. But it was mine. There was no squad calendar pinned to the fridge, no group chat buzzing at 2 a.m., no sequins blocking the path to an anniversary dinner. I started rediscovering what weekends looked like when they didn't belong to 5 other people. I had dinner with an old college friend I hadn't seen in a year. I watched a movie marathon without someone demanding live commentary for their Instagram story. I even just sat on my small balcony with a beer and no agenda. It felt like a vacation after being trapped in someone else's social circus for years. The greatest irony was that I wasn't lonely. With all my newfound free time, I reconnected with friends and family I had unintentionally neglected. It hit me with the force of a revelation. Thea's obsession with community had made me isolated. Now that I was alone, I wasn't alone at all. Several months into this new life, I met Clara. We bumped into each other at a bookstore, which sounds like the opening line of a romantic comedy, except neither of us was holding a quirky novel. We were both standing in the coffee section, pretending we didn't live on caffeine. Clara was different. She was grounded, funny in a dry, understated way. She had close friends, but she also believed in the radical concept of boundaries. When we had our first dinner, she left her phone in her purse the entire time. When I cracked a sarcastic joke, she laughed without needing to record it for an audience of 20 strangers. After 2 years of competing with the human embodiment of a group chat, it felt like being upgraded from dial-up to fiber optic. We weren't rushing anything. It was just dinners, walks, late-night talks about everything and nothing. But it felt like something real, something solid, the very kind of connection Thea had convinced me didn't exist outside the blinding floodlights of her circle. With Clara, the conversation was the main event, not the pregame. Word travels faster than Wi-Fi when it comes to drama. My buddy Owen, who worked with Griffin, started feeding me updates. He was my unofficial war correspondent in the slow-motion collapse of the Circle Civil War. The first casualty was Griffin. He got engaged to his girlfriend, Felicity, a woman who believed grown adults shouldn't spend every single Sunday playing board games with the same people they met in college. Felicity started gently pushing Griffin to set boundaries. To everyone's shock, he listened. He started skipping group hangouts for date nights. He declined their annual beach trip because he was visiting Felicity's parents. According to Owen, Thea lost it. "You're becoming just like Elias," she'd hissed at him. I had become a cautionary tale. Imagine that. Choosing your future wife over a drinking game makes you the bogeyman. Then came Sloane. She landed a massive promotion that required her to relocate to Portland. It was a real-life, career-defining opportunity. But instead of cheering, Thea scolded her for abandoning the family. Because in Thea's world, ambition was a form of betrayal if it didn't come with a squad group photo. Sloane, hurt and baffled, started pulling away. And then there was the time bomb, Blair and Reese. They'd been circling each other for years in a not-so-secret, will they, won't they, mess. Turns out, they finally did. It was great for them for about 3 months, and then terrible for the group dynamic. Their breakup was a messy, scorched earth affair that made it impossible for them to be in the same room. Sacred Sundays were officially canceled. So, while I was out there building a simple, drama-free life, Thea was watching her empire crumble. The very thing she had chosen over our marriage was cracking like cheap glass. And then, like clockwork, she reappeared. The first text came on a Tuesday night, after months of silence. "Hey, I know things ended badly. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime?" I feel like we both said things we didn't mean. I stared at the phone. Coffee. The same woman who skipped my graduation for a housewarming party now wanted a latte summit. I didn't reply. The next day, another text. "I know I made mistakes. I was young. I didn't understand balance. I've been learning. Maybe we could try again?" I showed the text to Owen over a beer. He laughed so hard he nearly choked. "Translation," he said, wiping his eyes. Her friend group is imploding, and suddenly she remembers, "Oh right, husbands exist." He wasn't wrong. The timing was everything. She never texted when the circle was thriving. She texted when Griffin was pulling away, Sloane was moving, and Blair and Reese were too busy hating each other to stroke her ego. I'll admit, I thought about it. Not about actually going back, but about whether she'd truly changed. But then I remembered I spent 2 years begging her to understand. I wrote letters. I gave speeches. I compromised myself into a shadow. She never listened then. Her sudden enlightenment wasn't growth. It was desperation. So I didn't answer. I didn't owe her a coffee date or a second audition or another chance to make me 6th place. Divorce doesn't look like the movies. There's no gavel slam, no cinematic music swell. It's a stack of papers slid across a particle board table, a pen that runs out of ink halfway through your signature, and a clerk who looks like they'd rather be anywhere else. By the time the papers were finalized, I didn't even feel relief. Just quiet. It was like finally shutting off a machine that had been humming in the background of my life for so long, I'd forgotten silence existed. Weeks later, Clara and I were at an Italian place downtown. Red wine, pasta that tasted like someone's grandmother had actually made it, and easy laughter. We were talking about something stupid, whether pineapple on pizza was a crime against humanity when I saw them. Thea, Blair, and Reese, sitting at a corner table. The circle was down to a triangle. Griffin and Sloane were predictably absent, off living their adult lives. Our eyes met across the room. For a moment, she froze like a deer on a highway. Then she gave me a small, hesitant wave. "Everything okay?" Clara asked, noticing my sudden stiffness. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Just my ex." We kept eating, but as we were leaving, Thea intercepted us near the door. "Elias," she said, her voice quick and nervous. "Just a minute?" Clara squeezed my hand. "I'll wait by the car." She gave me a smile that said, "Handle your past. I'll be here in the present." It was a gift. Thea looked different, tired, maybe just older. The sequins and trendy slogans were gone. She was wearing a plain gray sweater that made her look more human, less of a brand. "I know you haven't responded to my texts," she began, twisting a napkin in her hands. "And I get why. But I just wanted to say, you were right, about balance, about priorities, about everything." I stayed quiet, letting her speak. "I see Griffin and Felicity, how they build their life together, and I realize I never gave that to you. I see Sloane moving on, Blair and Reese breaking up, and I feel left behind. And I finally get it. You wanted a partner, and I gave you an audience member. I'm sorry, Elias. I really am." It was the first time she'd ever said it without qualifiers, without excuses, without blaming my need for her time. For half a second, I felt that old pull, the memory of the woman I'd fallen in love with before the circle had swallowed her whole. But then I remembered the hospital waiting room, the graduation gift, the anniversary ticket still folded in an envelope, with a torn corner in a box somewhere in my closet. I appreciate you saying that, Thea, I said, my voice even, but it doesn't change anything. We're divorced. That chapter's closed. Her eyes flicked over my shoulder to where Clara was waiting in the parking lot, a silhouette against the streetlights, then back to me. She gave a sad little smile. She seems lovely. I hope she knows what she has. Lee. She does, I said, and the words were the truest I'd ever spoken, because I made sure to choose someone who actually knows how to choose me back. She nodded, a final small acceptance. She stepped aside and let me walk past. No screaming, no scene, just a tired wave goodbye that felt a year too late. As I walked out into the cool night air toward Clara, I didn't feel triumph or pity. I just felt quiet. The humming was gone for good. I didn't just move apartments. I moved into a life where dinners meant conversation, not content, where anniversaries were celebrated on the actual date, and where love wasn't something you squeezed in between other people's crises. Clara and I aren't perfect, but we choose each other. Every day, in small ways and big ones. And after everything, I've learned that choice isn't just a part of love. It's the entire foundation. Marriage isn't a side quest. It's the main story. And if someone can't see that, it's better to sign the papers, shut the door, and start a new chapter where you are. Finally, more than just sixth place.